Rafah is suffering from a reign of terror. There's horror in the streets of Gaza's southernmost city. Despite global outcry over the continued civilian casualties in Rafah, Israeli tanks continue to advance towards the center of the city. Last night, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza reported that a total of 21 people were killed, 64 others injured in a strike on a displaced persons camp in West Rafah. Israel denied striking the humanitarian area, but the latest attack came shortly after a strike that killed 45 Palestinians on Sunday. Today, the Israeli army is pushed into the heart of Rafah city. It has carried its military operation out in multiple places. Areas near the Zoar roundabout in Rafah witnessed violent bombardment from Israeli tanks that coincided with the sounds of gunfire and intense fight by Israeli drones in the air. In addition, the bombardment has forced a great number of Palestinians, more for fear of missiles, to flee to other places, including Khan Yunis. A surge in attacks was reported in the southern part of Rafah city, very close to the Egyptian border. You see the Israeli military, it's pushing deeper along the Philadelphia corridor, slowly getting closer to the western part of the city. From central part of Rafah city came reports of families trapped inside their residential homes, caught in the line of artillery fire. According to reports, the Israeli quadcopters chased people there, preventing them from evacuating to safer areas. Meanwhile, in northwest part of Rafah, where tent camps have been attacked in recent days, the situation is reportedly getting worse by the hour. Nearly all health and public facilities have been pushed out of service. It's because of the ongoing artillery shelling by the Israeli army. It's making it very difficult for patients and health teams to reach the Emirati maternity hospital. It's the only partially functioning hospital in the city. On Tuesday, the Israeli army had reinforced its presence in Rafah, deploying a total of 4 brigades. It claims to have taken control of approximately 30 to 40% of Rafah. Because of Israel's military offensive in Rafah, lives of 600,000 displaced children is at risk. The death toll, it's risen. Over 36,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 81,000 have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since the 7th of October. Since Israel's Rafah offensive started 3 weeks ago, there's been renewed outrage and outcry from world leaders. Israel, which initially had widespread global support following Hamas's October 7th attack, it's now facing increasing international criticism for its actions. Israel's assurances of civilian protection have been inadequate. In fact, it has only mounted concerns about its operations. The world is upset with Israel. The European Union had stated that it will consider imposing sanctions on Israel if it refuses to comply with the International Court of Justice's order to stop its military campaign in Rafah. This is the first time EU ministers have had serious discussions about their response to the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Saudi Arabia, it has accused Israel of continued genocidal massacres against the Palestinian people without deterrence. While Israel's leaders dismiss claims of genocide and insist that their campaign against Hamas is justified under the right of self-defense, this is just evidence that the way Israel is conducting the war no longer has any takers. But you see, world leaders get, apparently, what America doesn't. In every war, there comes a time when leaders have to draw a red line. Despite everything that has happened in Rafah, Washington has said that latest Rafah deaths won't impact its Israel policy. On Tuesday, the White House provided the most complete definition yet of what, according to it, could trigger a change in its policy towards Israel. Speaking to reporters, National Security spokesperson John Kirby said that Israel's actions have not yet reached that level. Listen to this.
We still don't believe that a major ground operation in Rafah is warranted. We still don't want to see the Israelis, as we say, smash into Rafah with large units over large pieces of territory. We still believe that, and we haven't seen that at this point. But we're going to be watching this, of course, very, very closely.
And just want to make this very clear, between what's happened on Sunday, what's happened in terms of the ongoing ground operations since, there's nothing that you have seen thus far that would prompt a U.S. withdrawal of more military assistance.
I believe that's what I've been saying here.
Now, Washington has informed the world that the recent deaths in Rafah will not affect its Israel policy. This raises the question, if graphic images of dead bodies from Rafah and the mounting death toll do not lead to a change in policy, where does the United States draw its red line? How long will President Biden allow Israel to operate with impunity? Despite recent bloodshed and Israeli military actions in Rafah, the United States has failed to hold Israel accountable. The withholding of a shipment of heavy bombs earlier this month due to disagreements over Rafah, it had sparked hope for a reconsideration of unconditional support for Israel. But that turned out to be too good to be true. Soon after the U.S. expressed its ironclad support for Israel, the Biden administration also approved the transfer of $1 billion in weapons to its ally. The Biden administration, it has been changing its stance on Israel's actions in Rafah, while Israel has increased its attacks on Rafah. The White House has mainly been debating what does or does not constitute an invasion. There's growing international pressure on Biden, who has supported Netanyahu since the beginning and has described himself as a Zionist. At home as well, political pressure is mounting on Biden, especially ahead of presidential elections in November. Republicans have criticized Biden for what they say is his waning support for Israel. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson has also invited Netanyahu to address Congress. Republican presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump, who's often boasted of his support for Israel, now says that the country must finish what they started against Hamas. He has stated that Israel needs to get it over with fast because it is, quote-unquote, losing the PR war. Palestinians are becoming victims of America's political maneuvering. Meanwhile, President Biden remains rock solid in his support for Israel. He has provided billions of dollars worth in weapons. As a balancing act, President Biden has also ramped up public criticism of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about his handling of the war in Gaza. So you see, Palestinians in Gaza have become victims of America's pole politics, and that's the real tragedy here. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.